there and welcome back to another review. Today we're going to be having a look at one of my favourite horror movies, and that is Phantasm. Just absolutely love this film. I'll be getting into today why I enjoy this film so much. It is a classic in my eyes. We'll try and get to all the sequels in upcoming videos, but we'll look at the original today. Though not super scary, I think the film is just great fun. It really is just great fun throughout. The acting is somewhat cheesy and hammy in places. It's almost like though that's how it's intended to be. The film is quite intelligent in the way it's made and structures, and you're never really 100% sure what's going on. It does keep you guessing. The whole film with the music, it plays very much like a dream with its imagery and its soundtrack, and that all adds to what makes the film, in my eyes, just so fantastic. So if you've seen Phantasm and you're a fan of it, I'd love to hear from you. So I will try and get to all the sequels of Phantasm, but we'll be looking at the classic original today. It makes the film is very different, and what I like about this film is that it is original. That's what I love about this movie. It's not like any other film. Obviously, like I said, this film has numerous sequels, but we'll be looking at the original stay made in 1979, directed by Coscarelli, and obviously featuring the infamous Toolman, played by Angus Scrimm, who has become somewhat of a horror icon over the years, and then nasty floating metallic spears that are synonymous with the Phantasm franchise. The film goes from like gore to horror to psychological thriller all at the same time. It never really takes itself overly that seriously throughout the narrative and the story that's taking place. It's almost, like I say, sometimes with the acting and what's happening, it's almost like there is always that cheeky little wink at the audience. It's not played dead straight. It's not played just sort of necessarily like sort of straight horror. At least I don't believe it is. Not to say the film is like funny throughout, but it's just a fun film. It's a fun horror film, I think, and it's one of them movies that you can gain a lot from repeat viewings if you watch it again. And that's sometimes you'll watch it again. I've seen it numerous times. And you always pick up something new when you watch it like another time. There's always little things you may not notice, or little things that, when you look at the whole plot, you think that, do I remember this bit? The whole film is sort of very bizarre, but as I say, with its dreamlike imagery and its soundtrack, it is a fun film, and it's just one I always enjoy watching. It's worth mentioning as well, the film is brilliantly paced, with not too much focus on one thing or the other. The balance here is just right. They don't just go straight out horror, jump scares. The balance and pacing of the film is very much really well done, and credit to the filmmakers for getting it just right. The cast and crew was made up of friends and sort of aspiring professionals. Don Coscarelli wrote, directed and edited the movie. A lot of the scenes apparently were just improvised on the spot, and like Reggie Bannister in this movie said, he never actually saw a finished script of the film. He never actually saw like a finalised finished script in the movie. It's sort of basically done on like a scene by scene basis, like what was needed for the day, what they had to do for the day. It wasn't like there was a whole script and that was just what they went on. It was very much done on the fly, like I say, scene by scene. It's worth mentioning a bit like trivia as well that J.J. Abrams called Captain Phasma her name in the Star Wars sequels because of this movie. So a little bit of trivia for you there. So we'll just get into the plot here, and we'll just, like I say, I'll just run through it. Little things that stood out for me, little things that popped up in my head and while I was watching it, and go through the film, just give you my opinion. So the film opens with this couple sort of having sex in a graveyard. That's how it starts, and you learn the guy's name is Tommy. Then out of nowhere, the girl just stabs him. So, they're having relations, they're getting a bit intimate together and everything, and just out of nowhere, she stabs him. And then we see her turn quickly, sort of this cut to the tall man, played by Angus Scrimm. So you get the impression that she's not all she seems to be, because the camera quickly cuts, and there's him standing there. We then go to the funeral where we meet Jodie and Reggie, who are under the belief that it was a suicide. So this girl, like the tall man's killed Tommy, and they think it's a suicide. Jodie has a little brother called Mikey. Whilst inside, Jodie thinks he hears stuff in the funeral home. Though, he was told not to come to the funeral, Mikey comes along anyway and spots, the tall man putting the coffin back into the hearse. So he's sort of Jodie's always trying to sort of protect Mikey. He's always trying to sort of like, don't get involved. But Mikey's always sort of glued to Jodie. He's always sort of following him. So he's seen, like to say, the tall man. He was meant to like sort of drive, but he ends like, he puts the coffin back into the hearse, and he sort of picks it up so easily with his strength. Puts the coffin back into the hearse. He then goes to this Mikey then goes to this local mystic. As young boys always do. You got your schools, you've got everything going on. You're growing up, and you've got to have your local mystic that you go to, your local somebody that can give you sort of advice into mysticism and things like that, like a fortune teller, as it were. So, as young boys always do, then he's worried like Jodie is going to leave him. So Mikey's always got this fear of abandonment. He's always got this fear that Jodie's going to leave him. He's going to run away. And that's why, like, throughout the film, he's constantly trying to be where Jodie is. He's trying to always be where, like, if Jodie says you're not coming, Mikey will insist that he comes, that kind of thing. She tells him to put like his hand in this random box, and it like snags it, and he's basically told like fear is only a reflection. So that's going to probably come up later in the film. Then we have this awesome scene for no reason of Reggie and Jodie having like a guitar jam. It serves no purpose at all. Serves absolutely no purpose, just these two having a little funky guitar jam together, which from what I can tell, they're both actually playing their instruments. And it's sort of, like I say, Jodie's sort of playing, Reggie comes in, unpacks his guitar, and they just basically just have a little jam for a couple of seconds. So, like I say, serves no purpose, but it's just a really cool little scene. Just think it works within the film. Then later, Jodie gets seduced by the woman who killed Tommy at the start, who again takes him to the graveyard. So she's got a thing with graveyards and near the funeral home, but again, we know it's sort of the tall man in disguise. So Mike, being the paranoid brother that he is, follows them and spies on them as they are getting sort of down and dirty, and something sort of jumps out on him which causes him to run and scream like mad, alerting Jodie, who then returns and like the girl's disappeared. So Mike, something sort of comes up to him, like he senses something, so it sort of freaks him out. He runs across. Jodie's, let's say, getting down with the girl, and like I say, Mikey just runs across, freaking out completely. So yeah, and then when he returns, the girl is gone. And that night, Mikey has a dream. This thin man is like sort of standing over him, and like creatures coming out of the ground to grab him. Which, if you watch that bit, it is quite freaky. It is quite freaky the way it's depicted, because you see the thin man sort of standing over him, like over his bed, or just with Mikey sort of laying there, and these like creatures come out of the ground and grab him. It's sometimes, like I say, with this film, it is very much the imagery that does stick with you during Phantasm. It's not a film you sort of like necessarily, like some horror films, they can be sort of throwaways. And like I said, bearing in mind this was made in 1979, and I think bearing in mind the budget it was made on, how sort of rushed it may have been behind the scenes, and like I say, Don Coscarelli getting money from friends and family and things like that to make it. I mean, there's a real like sort of vision here with what he was trying to create. I mean, I believe so anyway. Whilst underneath a car doing some work on it, the car lands on like Mikey, and it's these things that he thinks he's seeing. He keeps on seeing these like creatures, but you're not at this point quite 100% sure what these creatures are. So being sort of the brave younger brother he is, he goes to the funeral home on his own at night. I mean, bearing in mind some of the stuff he's seen so far, or at least what he thinks he's seen, he decides to go there at night on his own. Yeah, it takes some bravery, like I say, credit to him. So he smashes a window to get in, and is grabbed by one of sort of the help within the funeral home. And like I said, the synonymous floating metal ball, which like patrols the hallway, goes for Mikey. And after biting the guy's arm, it drills into the head of the other dude. Absolutely love this. Absolutely, the way it's done is so, so cool. The way the blood flies, the way it spews out, it sort of drills into his head. It's just, this is like the kind of what you always remember about Phantasm. I say that floating metal spear, and just when it drills into the, it's just good stuff. It's just all good stuff. Just the way all the blood spews out. So the tall man chases him, and Mikey ends up shutting his fingers in the door. So Mikey cuts one off and takes it with him. Takes one of the tall man's fingers. And he goes, goes to Jodie. But before he's chased before he escapes, he's like these creatures that he thought he was seeing. They're like evil little Jawas from Star Wars. That's sort of what they seem like to me. They're just like they're just, these are nasty Jawas basically. These are not Jawas that you want to necessarily be around. And he escapes, so he goes back to Jodie. He shows him the finger from the tall man and tells him what he saw. And then the finger. This is where again the film gets really fun. The film turns into like this wasp-like, bug-like creature, which they managed to put down like the garbage disposal. And it's just funny the way Mikey and Jodie are sort of manhandling this thing, and you can hear these sort of wasp sounds with like the wings going, like a really loud fly, a really loud wasp. And it is just a fun little scene with them just trying to get this thing down the waste disposal. It's just, like I say, it's all good in this film. Like I say, the film is pretty damn mad in places. It definitely has its mad moments. It goes from one thing to the next, So then Jodie goes to have a look at the funeral home and is attacked too by the psychotic Jawas, and Mikey picks him up, and they are pursued by the funeral car, which appears to have no driver in it. So they start using the shotgun on it to kill the engine, and it turns out to be their friend Tommy who's driving the car, and that's why it appeared like there was nobody driving the car, because he's been turned into one of these sort of, like I say, evil Jawas that are sort of terrorizing them. So he's been sort of shrunk down, and even though when they put him into Reggie's van, he still weighs the same weight. So again, you're like, what is going on? What on earth is going on? I'd say they put him in the back of Reggie's ice cream truck, and Reg takes Mike to be looked after by one of their friends at this antique store, where he sees this old photo of the tall man. So after a few minutes, he wants to be taken home, to which they oblige, and they find Reggie's ice cream truck abandoned and on the side of the road. So after being attacked by evil Jawas again, Mike runs home, and Jodie locks him in his room, and then Mikey, yet again, being so persistent like he is, manages to get out of his room. Like I said earlier, he's always, if Jodie doesn't want him somewhere, Mikey will go out of his way to be there. Mikey is so he cannot, the amount of times he says, it'd be much easier if they just stuck together throughout the film, because then it's always whenever they split up, bad stuff happens to one or the other. So it would have been maybe an idea if they sort of stuck together. But so he locks Mikey in his bedroom, and he gets out with basically the aid of a hammer and a shotgun shell. Like I said, I can't help but wondering at some point if it had just been easier if Mikey and Jodie just stay together. So as he goes to escape his house and sort of go after Jodie, the tall man grabs him and throws him into the back of the hearse, and he shoots his way out. A common theme of the film that I noticed is Mikey being told not to come, or Mikey being, like I said, being locked away, or Mikey being told he's not welcome, or I don't want you there. But he always he's always escaping. He's, like I say, he's kind of, that sort of like in a dream where it's like you're being chased, or you're feeling you can't get out of something, but then somehow miraculously in the next instance you do find yourself out of that situation. If you've ever had dreams like that, like if you're being chased by somebody and then suddenly the dream switches to something else. It's very much that sort of idea where Mikey, like I say, if he's trapped in the hearse by the tall man, he's locked in his room by Jodie. He's always sort of confined, but he never just is limited to just staying there. He always does manage to get out, and just through whatever means necessary, he will get out. So he goes to the funeral home and finds Jodie and Reggie there. Reggie just comes out of nowhere at this point, because when you saw Reggie's van parked up, you assumed Reggie was dead. So you're thinking all that time, Reggie's dead, and then he pops out of nowhere. Just because it seems he was dead doesn't mean he was. This is what I'm saying with this film. Just because something seems a certain way doesn't mean that's how it actually is. And they find this room that has a portal where Mikey sort of goes through, and he sees these sort of dwarfs in this dimensional planet being used as slaves, and that's what the tall man's doing. He's sort of getting these bodies, shrinking them down so they can be used as sort of slaves on this other planet. So like I say, they're being sort of shrunken down. Then the power goes out and they all get separated. Reggie creates a vacuum in the portal, and then gets stabbed by the woman who's at the start of the film, the blonde woman who was sort of having sex with Tommy at the start and who tried to have sex with Jodie as well. It's funny as well, like at one point they're going to go to the police. Jodie's like, we'll go to the police, we'll sort this out, you know, we can't mess around this anymore. Then that plan gets totally scrapped as the film goes on. There's no mention of going to the police anymore, because I don't even think they know what's going on, but there is a sort of a twist at the end of the film that sort of, you can sort of forgive sort of everything not making sense. So they plan to lure the tall man to like an abandoned mine shaft. So naturally, as always, they split up again. You know, and that's another thing in dreams. You know, like where you can't find somebody, or you can't find something, or you're, like I say, you're lost, or you're not quite sure where you are. This is what this film does sort of play on. Like they're constantly splitting up. Like the brothers especially are constantly splitting up. And guess, you know, the tall man shows up and chases Mike, you know, go figure. And he chases him all the way to the shaft and sort of falls down the hole. I mean, this is another interesting thing at the end. You know, the fact that Jodie drove there and Mike ran there means there's no sense of distance in regards to that sort of dream state. Because, like, Jodie says, I'm going to go up to that mine shaft and just, you know, get it all sort of ready so we can lure him in. Mikey manages to run there as well. So the idea of sort of distance and time is another thing that in this film you're not quite sure how long it's been, how far, you know, you could go around the corner and suddenly you're there, but in another instance it might take you ages to drive there. That's what I noticed about this film, is, like I say, you're never really 100% sure what is real. Like, you're never quite clear what is real. It's that constant dream state. It's one of them films, like I said, on each viewing, you will gain something from it, as I mentioned earlier. So, like I say, he chases Mikey, and the tall man goes down, like, sort of the mine shaft. So, after all this, you're thinking, okay, they've got rid of the tall man, it's all done, the brothers survived. And then there's this massive, like, sort of, like, twist at the end where Mikey wakes up and we see Reggie again. So that's Reggie, who you think was killed twice now. He's now alive. So Mikey's just woke up from this dream. So the whole film you're meant to imagine was a dream. Mikey wakes up, Reggie's still there, who explains to him that Jodie was killed in a car crash, like, ages ago. Like, you know, and their parents are gone, and like I say, he's lost his bigger brother Jodie. So at this point you're thinking, so that whole time then, was that all real? Did that actually happen? Because, like I say, Reggie's died twice at this point. So then he goes into his room, Reggie's like, let's go on a road trip, clear our heads, let's go and sort ourselves out. Mikey's all up for it, and he goes into his room, and then he sees the tall man in the mirror, who goes on to grab Mikey, pulls him through, and then the credits come up. So you're never overly sure this whole film what is real, and I think that's what makes it so good, because I think really good films, especially really good horror films, are the films you can watch again and again, that you do take something more from every time you see it. And Phantasm is no exception. Phantasm is a perfect example of that. As I say, even just with the soundtrack, you know, the antagonist in the tall man, that dream state, everything about it, the imagery, just the whole idea is you're just never sure what's going on, and the whole film is just intriguing from start to finish. So my advice to you is, if you like classic horror movies, if you want a horror movie that is very sort of surreal, bizarre, but at the same time does have a few little comedy moments, does hold your interest, is very intriguing throughout, and you will get continuous repeat viewings out of, then please go and check out Phantasm, because it is, as I say, it's a great film, it's one of my favourites, and you owe it to yourself to check it out.